friends, today we are going to read chapter 7 of the Empire of Koomba. When we left off in chapter 6, Julie was on her way running in past the six-headed monster while her friends were fighting it as a distraction. And as she ran toward it, she saw a glittering path ahead that was covered in gold. So this chapter is called The Face of Azul. Soon the noises of battle faded completely, and all Julie could hear were her own soft footsteps tapping along the golden path. "This is so beautiful," she said to herself, "and so strange. Is this a street from the ancient Koomba? Is that where I am?" All at once the street turned, and the passage's low ceiling gave way to a high, ornate vault, also made of shimmering gold. On either side of her, the remains of once great buildings topple upon themselves. Huge blocks of silvery stone, fallen towers etched in brass, and the remains of the turreted walls surrounded her. Great hanging lamps of golden crystal and shreds of banners torn, all ragged of swung in the sudden breezes, and the air sang with the plinking of tiny bells. I'm going to pause for a second. So that is a place where we want to create a picture in our head, where she's running into this ancient city of Koomba that they thought, that's why it's called the Lost Empire of Koomba. This is the Lost Empire we're in. And it describes the buildings. It says huge blocks of silvery stone, fallen towers, etched in brass. So brass is a metal. These towers had brass on them, but they're fallen because they're old, or because the city was under attack. The remains of turreted walls surrounded her. Turreted walls are the kinds of walls you'd see on a castle. And if you look at the little picture at the top of page 80, you can see what those castle walls look like that have fallen. Great hanging lamps of gold and crystal and shreds of banners, torn and ragged, all swung in the sudden breezes. So if you think about an old castle, when you've seen pictures, sometimes they have banners hanging from them. And so these are flying in the air in the breeze, like the wind is blowing them, but they're all torn. So it's giving us that picture that this is really, it's an abandoned city. It's something happened here and people haven't been living here. "Koomba does exist," Julie said to herself, "and I found it." Rubbing her hand, she realized that the wing wolf scratch was becoming inflamed. Inflamed means kind of infected or bigger. Rubbing her hand, a warm desert breeze touched her cheek. Looking beyond the buildings and into the distance, she saw what could only be the brightening of light of day. "The passages lead out," she whispered. So she's going through the passage and she can see where it's going to come out. That's where that light is. As she approached the light, however, she glimpsed a curving passage of fallen blocks to her left. It was barely lit by its own light, but seemed to her as bright as a beacon. "That way, then," she whispered. Drawn by the light, Julie rushed forward, trusting her instincts. Her instincts let her down. So she's running the wrong way. That's what it means. Her instincts let her down. She tripped twice over uprooted paving stones, bumped her shoulders on tilted lampposts, banged her knees over and over on stone blocks, and barely escaped knocking herself out. So as you picture her running, you can kind of see her falling over and over and over. She almost knocked herself out. That's how hard she's hitting her head from falling. Then she stopped. A smoky purple cloud seemed to float up from nothing and fill the passage. "What? Oh, not now, please," she said. "Not the past." But the cloud would not stop. It grew and grew like smoke from a bottle, and there was Galen standing near her, his face just as it had been before, worried and afraid. "Galen," she said, "what is it?" So she's having a vision. He answered in a faraway voice, as if he spoke from somewhere distant. He did not look directly at Julie. "By the time you see me here, whoever you are, I shall be gone. Even a wizard cannot choose the moment of going. But listen close. Fearing for the safety of Jaffa City, I have stolen and hidden the most precious artifact, the moon medallion." "You stole it?" said Julie. Remember, they need that moon medallion to help Eric. But the wizard continued, To keep it safe, none shall lay eyes upon it for 100 years. But we need it for Eric. We need it. Eric asked for it. As before, a second shape and a voice appeared from the swirling smoke. Wizard, come! And both figures vanished into thin air. When the vision cleared, Julie looked down where Galen had stood. There, so tiny, she might have missed it, lay a small silver vial. So a vial's like that little jar. The Fazool! But when Julie bent down to reach for it, the vial's top came loose and a single drop of green liquid seeped out. It hissed where it had struck the floor. Right before her eyes, the drop transformed itself into the monster with fiery scales and snapping tentacles. Julie blinked. When she opened her eyes again, she saw only the empty vial on the floor. The image repeated time again in her mind, with the sound of bells chiming, until she finally understood what it meant. So on this page, we see this monster, and we see that vial on the floor, so we know that her vision is that when a drop comes out, the drop becomes this big monster. But then it tells us that when she opens her eyes, she only sees the empty vial on the floor. She doesn't see the monster. So she's having a vision of this monster forming out of this drop, but it's not really happening in front of her. She only has the empty vial. That's what happened, she cried. It's not a vision of the future. It's a vision of the past, just like my vision of Galen in the violet fog. And Julie realized there was nothing to find in the passages but the fallen remains of the ancient empire. She and her friends had already discovered the elixir. 300 paces behind her, Neil, Kia, Hob, and the Night Fox were battling it right now. The elixir was the monster. That's important, friends. That drop of elixir they need for Eric had become that monster that they're battling. So the vial she has nothing in it. They need to get that monster. She laughed out loud. Seeing into the past is an amazing power. It is helpful. It's important. It can help save Droon. When Julie picked up the vial, she found it frosty, cold to the touch. Holding it tightly, she sprinted back through the dark passages. This time she knew every turn to make. Crawling out beyond the collapsed wall, Julie found her friends deep in battle with the monster. Don't hurt it, she cried. But it's hurting us, shouted Neil. It's burning me. Ouch! He swatted the beast's coiling tentacles, but they were too swift and too many for him. Grabbing him by the legs, the monster hoisted him off the floor and dropped him with a thud. Neil's shirt smoked as he staggered to his feet. See what I mean? Julie, stand back, said Kia, aiming her fingers to blast the monster. Wait, cried Julie, don't shoot. The monster is the elixir. So Julie has to tell her friends this because they're about to destroy the monster. And if they destroy the monster, then maybe they'll destroy the elixir. The vial is cold, but the heart of air made it grow. We need a spell to turn it cold again. All at once, Neil jumped up. Remember, Neil has genie powers. He can grant wishes. Snow, he said. That is what my dream was all about. I can do this. Genies are great at making snow. Please do it quickly, said Hob. As Kia sprayed sparks here and there, and the Night Fox barked at the monster, Neil uncoiled his miniature scroll of instructions and recited the ancient charm. In moments, the first tiny snowflakes, as green as spring grass, began to fall into the passage. As the flakes fell, the monster stopped its attack. It raised its tentacles to the falling snow as to capture each flake, and it grew smaller and smaller by the instant. Soon all that remained was a single drop of green liquid, which Julie urged into the empty vial. She snapped on the lid and locked it. The Fazool was theirs. Safe and sound, Julie said. That was amazing, said Kia. How did you know that? Julie smiled. It's as simple as remembering stuff I never knew. Guess what else? The ruins of Koomba lie beyond that cave. That cave-in. I saw a vision of Galen there. Only this time I heard every word. He stole the moon medallion and hid it away for 100 years, he said. Hob murmured to himself. A riddle, no doubt. Hob shall put his devious mind to work on it immediately. Another thing I discovered in the passage is what the roads led out to a surface of sand. We can escape. At that moment, they heard yells echoing down the passages. Help! We can escape to the surface, said Hob. But Mashta, remember, that's the Empress of the Sand Children, needs our help. Then that's where we're going, said Kia. Stand back. She blasted the rocks around the Tuscaden, freeing it. Climbing inside, the 5 friends powered up and turned out on the thundered back down the passage to the cavern and Mashta to her people. So the Tuscaden wasn't broken, but it was trapped, and now they're back in it. When they arrived, the sand folks were huddled at the bottom of the wobbly stairs, right under the entrance hole. It's terrible, said Mashta. That horrible Captain Grunto has called more beasts than I've ever seen. They will destroy our little Koomba. Your big Koomba, said Julie. The Lost Empire still exists. I found it beyond the forbidden passages. Suddenly a great roar came from the surface. It was only when the friends climbed the stairs to the opening and peeked out that they heard one particular voice. You don't have to be so rude, it said, even if you are a giant snake. Silence, old ones. Please don't speak that way to my wife, said another voice, and for the last time take your paws off my jacket. The children turned to one another. The Hinkles? Whispered Kia. At the trading post? That means the snakelings are here too. Snakelings here, said Hob. My goodness, they are legendary. And just a reminder, the Hinkles are Eric's parents. So they had been captured by the snakelings in the beginning, but now the snakelings are here and they're back together with the Hinkles. So we have a lot of questions as we leave off here. We know that the city of Koomba exists, and we have shrunken down that that monster, and so we have the drop of Azul, but the medallion supposedly is missing for 100 years. But Hob said it's a riddle, so maybe something else will happen there. And they're back helping Mashta, and then they have to escape, and they still have to help Eric. So I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I didn't want to break it in half because it was pretty exciting, and I felt like if we would have stopped, I would have been... I didn't want to leave off in the middle of such an exciting part. So that's why we did the whole chapter for today. Please look in your Google Doc for what I am going to ask you to think and write about it. And then if you have any questions, remember you can always message me on Google Hangout and I'll work with you. Have a great day.